I want to ask, do we have anyone in our heads that we would say to ourselves, I'm not sharing the gospel with them? That's a person, that's a group of people that I won't be giving the gospel to. Maybe it's people who you don't like. Maybe it's people who've been mean to you. Maybe it's people you're scared of. Maybe it's people who come from a certain country. Maybe you have said in your mind, there's no way that God would ever save people like that, so it's not worth my while even talking to them about it. The reason I say this is because our story today comes from Acts chapter 10, and it's the story of two men, of Peter, the apostle, and Cornelius, the centurion. Now, these two men didn't know each other at the beginning of the story, but God is going to do something to bring these together so that each one might learn something crucial from the other one. So Peter is living in a town called Joppa. He's staying there. He's probably moving around. He's evangelizing, which means sharing the gospel, but he is concentrating only on a Jewish audience. This man is a Roman centurion, and he lives in a town called Caesarea, and he is about 35 miles away. Now, Cornelius was unusual, that even though he was a Roman centurion and the Romans worshipped all kinds of gods, this was a man who the Bible describes as God-fearing, devout, generous, and who prayed often. Now, we would think straight away, well, this guy's got everything he needs. He's in the right place. He's already okay with God. But God needs something else to happen in this man's life so that he might fully receive what the gospel conversion is all about. Now, how is God going to get these two men together if they're 35 miles apart and they don't know each other? Well, what God does is he gives each of them a vision. First of all, he gives Cornelius a vision, and in his vision, he sees Peter. He hears about Peter from an angel, and the angel says to him, send men to Joppa, where Peter is, and bring this man Peter back because he has a message that I want you to hear. As soon as Cornelius comes out of the vision, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he immediately sends 3 men to go to Joppa to fetch Peter. Now, the following day, thinking it's 35 miles, takes quite a while to get there. They didn't have cars or trains, so they probably went by horseback or chariot. So it's going to take them an overnight journey to get there. The next day at noon, Peter is praying. A meal is being prepared for him because he's hungry and he's up on the roof praying. And at that moment, he gets a vision as well. Now, he doesn't get a vision of Cornelius, which would make sense. An angel doesn't tell him to go to see Cornelius. But what he does is he sees a vision of a sheet being lowered by its 4 corners from heaven. Here comes the sheet all the way down here. Now, what is in the sheet? What's in the sheet are all kinds of 4-footed animals, reptiles, and things like that, and birds. And the message to Peter, as he looks into this sheet in the vision, the message says, Peter, get up, kill, and eat. He says, I don't want to eat that stuff, not just because I don't like the look of it, because I know that the law of God forbids me to eat these animals because they are what's called unclean animals. And he says to the voice in the vision, he says, surely not, Lord, I have never eaten anything impure or unclean. The voice comes back to him and says, do not call unclean what God has made clean. Finally, the sheet is taken back up to heaven. Now, I'm leaving it there for a reason, but Peter gets that something's happening, that he has to change his mindset about what he has before called unclean. At that moment, the 3 men from Caesarea arrive to get him, and he realizes that now he has to go back with them to evangelize and give the message of Jesus to a Roman centurion. He now starts to realize that the people that he might have before said, well, there's no way I'm taking the gospel to them, God is mixing it up. God is starting to change him. And so he gladly goes with them back to see Cornelius. The reason I ask this is, do we have people in our lives that we think of as unclean animals? Who are the slithering reptiles in your life? Who are the people that you say to yourself, I would be offended if that person became a Christian. I don't want to share the gospel with them because there's no way that God would ever have them in his kingdom. Peter's learning that the gospel is not just for Jews. He's learning through this that God is opening up his kingdom to Gentiles, to non-Jews, to the whole world. In fact, all who call upon the name of Jesus will be saved. God is saying, I want this to be a huge body of believers taken from every nation and every tongue. That's what God is trying to do. When Peter goes back with the three men, he does preach to Cornelius and his whole household, and every one of them believes. They don't just believe because of Cornelius, they each hear for themselves, and each one puts their faith and their trust in Jesus because Peter has explained it to them. People that Peter would have said, surely these would never be part of God's kingdom, are now suddenly in his kingdom. You know, the great test for us is remembering where we came from. When we're pointing the finger and thinking, I'm sure God wouldn't want to save that person, always remember that he saved you and me. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people in my life who would think, wow, I can't believe you ever got saved, because you wouldn't have been one that I would have imagined. God takes people as unclean, as impure as we are, and he does something amazing with it. So I would challenge you this week, pray for an opening to speak to somebody that you might have already in your mind said, I probably will never speak to them about Jesus. Try it. Pray for the opportunity. Just put something out there, maybe just a reference to your faith, and see what God might be pleased to do. Because it might be that through your testimony, through your witness, through your willingness to change your mindset, God might want to do something incredible and save a life.